Data center development near Beloit raises concerns from residents living nearby. Now, town leaders say the project is still in the early phases and has entered a pre-development agreement with the company. Well, WIFR's Miriam Niesmeyer talks with a resident who worries about how the project could affect her future business.
Lana Duncan Hartgraves hopes to open an equine therapy center from the site being discussed within the next year. The program uses horses to help support people with physical, emotional, and mental health. But Hartgraves says if a data center pops up down the road from her house, she would have to move after 20 years.
There's something magical about horses. There just is.
Lana Duncan Hartgraves hopes to turn her rural Beloit property into an equine therapy center to help veterans with PTSD, children with autism, and people living with dementia.
And if you've never dealt with equine therapy before, it'll change your life.
But she says a potential data center planned within miles away from her home could change the quiet environment her business depends on.
Who's going to want to come out here?
Duncan Hartgraves says she's already preparing horses and working toward opening Whistle Acres within the next year.
If those data centers get built, we're going to have to move. And I don't want to. I've been here 20 years.
Town of Beloit leaders say the project is still in its early stages and no plans or applications have been submitted.
If this was a baseball game, we're not even in the first inning yet.
Town Administrator John Malazio says the town signed a pre-development agreement last summer with developer Cambrin LLC.
And nothing has come in front of the board to vote on besides that pre-development agreement I talked about that was put in place to make sure the town wasn't spending taxpayer money on something that may never come to fruition.
Town leaders say the development is located at a working gravel pit owned by Rock Road and more than 400 acres on the northeast side of the town of Beloit.
So the public would be notified and there would be plenty of opportunity for everybody to state their opinion. We are nowhere near that point yet.
The town is still waiting to see if the developer will move forward, and Duncan Hartgraves hopes she will be able to build the equine therapy center she believes could help people in the region.
Now, the town administrator says there's been no transaction of property, but there will be public hearings if the company moves forward in the planning process.